How to master your emotions. Now, what's the benefit of when you can get to the point where you master emotions? You're more productive throughout the day. You're less likely to leash out any unresolved tension, trauma, pain on other people, right? So your relationships, they increase in value and cooperation, right? It feels good to be around other people. Other people notice the change in you and they feel comfortable in you. You create a safe place for them and for yourself, right? You stop hating on yourself. You stop putting yourself down for things that you said or things that you did or things that you do, but you don't understand why. So this is why it's important to learn how to actually work with your emotions instead of it being in opposition to you. So the first point is to first acknowledge and validate your emotions. What does this mean? To acknowledge and validate your emotions is to get to the point where you can recognize in the present moment and whatever experience, whatever situation or scenario you're in, you can recognize, you know what, I'm feeling this way. And you can consciously tell yourself that it's okay to feel this way. To feel angry, to feel sad, to feel depressed, mad, jealous, etc. It's not bad. It's not good or bad. But you can't beat yourself up for the way that you feel. One of the other, reasons why we tend to suppress the emotions that we're feeling is because it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to feel the pain, to feel the hurt. Let's say from a breakup or, somebody who's yelling at you in an argument, or for you to witness something that just happened. It's okay to feel that way. What you have to realize is that you're not going to feel that way for the rest of your life. Those emotions are temporary. So when you realize that you can actually work with these emotions and use it to your advantage, you won't feel the need to suppress them. You won't feel the need to run away from them or hide from them. Because your emotions are there for a reason. It signals, it's your guidance system. It's telling you based off the information at hand, what you may need to do next, or what you need to say, or what you should stop doing, or what you should be doing, okay? Acknowledge and validate your emotions before you begin to work with them. Understand what's caused you to feel the way it is, whether it's certain people, the things that the people are doing, the environment you're in. Does it feel right? Because what happens is if you get to the point where you begin to suppress your emotions more and more, over time, you're going to get to the point where you start using other external sources to distract yourselves from the way that you're feeling in that present moment. Or you're going to do that for the period of time of however long you're feeling this, right? What are some distractions you might use to suppress your emotions when you don't acknowledge and validate them? Drugs, other activities, going out with friends, going out with strangers, maybe hooking up with people, random activities, maybe even getting in relationships to distract you from what's going on within, right? These are some common things that we do when we don't acknowledge and work with our emotions, and when we don't validate them. And in the end, we may seem like we're getting, away from it temporary, but what happens is it gets even more constricted and molded within you, and it begins to hurt even more and more. And it comes out in the conversations that you're having with other people. It comes out in your body language. Okay, so if you don't want to get to the point when you're using external sources like drugs, other activities, inauthentic relationships that you're doing for your own selfish desires or distract you from yourselves, first acknowledge and validate them. right? Now, the second part of this is to first know your triggers. What are your triggers? Your triggers can be anything that causes you to have an emotional response to something. It could be something that someone says or something that someone does or something that reminds you of a situation that you didn't like. It could remind you of a traumatic experience you went through recently or early on in childhood. I'll give you an example. In my experience, I know is a trigger for me was when people would get in arguments. It could be with other people or when people would try to get in arguments for me. In my own upbringing, I've experienced what it feels like to be someone is using me as a punching bag or a way, as someone where they can leash their unresolved trauma and leash their pain on me. And they're just spewing out all this garbage, all this stuff that, for me, it was hurting at the time. And it hurt me. And that would happen over and over again, right? I would witness it happen between other people, my parents, strangers. They would do it to me, right? So now later on, years down the line, I know it's something, that, was unconscious for me until I started, getting in the process of self-healing. That was one of my triggers. And for anybody who knows me, arguing is something that's not aligned with me. I don't argue. I haven't argued in years, right? Because it's something that was a trigger for me and something that over time, when I realized that was a trigger for me, I started to work with. I started to shift my perspectives and I started to realize why, these people were trying to leash out their emotions and argue with people or, use any sorts of things as a motive for why they had to say the things that they said or do the things that they were doing that was hurting me or other people around me. It's because of what's going on within them, right? So for me, I had to have empathy and compassion towards that. And that was something I had to work through. And now with the lens, the perspective that I have now, it's something that doesn't bother me or it's something that doesn't trigger me anymore. Right? So it's important for you to realize the things that make you tick. What are the things that you don't like that people do or that people say around you that cause you to... What are the things, another thing for me, I don't appreciate when people are late. I'm someone who's always on time to things. And if I agree to meet someone at a specific time, I'm going to meet them at that specific time or even earlier. I might show up 5 minutes earlier. So the magic of this is when you know your triggers, you can then begin to create an environment and create your own safe place or your own haven of your life where you don't submit yourself to environments or relationships where people do the things that tick you off. This doesn't mean you're controlling people, or this doesn't mean that you're not going to be able to have any successful relationships with people who know every single trigger you have or, every single thing that you don't like. What this means is that it's the foundation for you to actually reserve your energy and your own peace and get in control of your emotions. Because when you know your triggers, you can say, you know what, I'm not going to do this or I'm not going to go this place because I know it's going to happen and I know that's how it's going to make me feel. Right? So step number 3 would be boundaries. Boundaries are important and it kind of goes hand in hand with the triggers because the boundaries you set are what's going to also to help you to, get in control of your emotional well-being. The boundaries could be you saying, you know what, for these specific family members or these people, only call me within this time period throughout the day. Only call me on these days because I like to use my time with what I'm doing here and I want to reserve my peace, and I don't want to be distracted, and I don't want to be swayed from what I'm doing. It could also be that, you tell your friends or you tell your families that I need to be in bed by 9 o'clock. So if we're going to go out, if you want to go out, just know that I have to be back at my own house at 9 for my own peace. Set those boundaries, set those rules and regulations in your environment, in your relationships, because it helps you out, and that also helps other people out, because when you're conscious of this, you can let them know, and it creates a symbiotic relationship where you guys don't do anything that triggers one another, and there's a communication going behind it. So then, your past self, who would have got angry or sad or depressed for the things or the experience that you experienced early on when you didn't have boundaries, when you weren't in control of your emotions, you'll notice the change. So set those boundaries. Another thing is to get in control of your thoughts. I made a recent video, how to stop overthinking and have peace of mind. Now, what that means is you have to realize that the thoughts that you're having on a consistent basis usually correlate with an emotion at hand to a degree, right? If you're thinking about, the person at work, let's say you think they're an asshole. If you're thinking about the asshole at work who said something to you yesterday or last week, what do you think that's going to make you feel? Even though physically in the present, you're not at work, you're not around that person, you're not around those groups of people, you're not in that environment, you're still going to feel those emotions. Because why? The thoughts, the ideas, and the emotions go hand in hand. They're combined. They're linked. They're merged together, right? So you have to realize the thoughts that you're playing out in your head, the scenarios that you're playing out in your head over in time, over and over again, they can build momentum. So if you're thinking thoughts that correlate with fear, anger, jealousy, sadness, you're going to feel even more of that. And I talk about this in my other video. The mental emotional loop we have is when we're constantly thinking of these thoughts or these dominant thoughts that are linked with these lower emotions. And when we think them more and more over time, it builds a momentum where we have even more of those thoughts. And now our emotions are just all over the place. Our mood is all over the place. So when you're not acknowledging how you feel, when you're not setting boundaries, when you don't recognize your triggers, and your emotions are the byproduct of all these things, it's the after effect, it's the causation. Well, it's not the causation, but it's a byproduct. If you're not aware of these things, then you're going to be all over the place internally. You're going to feel hurt. You're going to feel sad. You're going to feel angry all the time. You're not going to be able to focus on what you need to focus on. You're not going to feel in control. So the key to do that is to do the things in these videos and work with it over time. That way you can get to the point where you just have this high baseline where not that you're never affected by anything or that you can never be triggered again, but when you start implementing these components, you'll get to the point where the things that would have made you mad or angry before, the things that would have affected you or triggered you, it either won't trigger you or you'll be triggered less often, or you'll feel less of that emotion in regards to that same experience, that same situation, that same scenario. You'll feel it less in frequency, and the impact of it will be smaller too. You'll be mad for a smaller duration or sad for a smaller duration. So give this a try. Let me know how this works in the comments below. You can email me or you can visit my Instagram at victorortiz.co. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked it, please share it with your friends or any family members who may receive any sort of value with it. And I'll see you again in the next video.